Good evening, sir. Namaskar.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Wonderful. We are now we are together in one virtual room. So we are neighbors. Professor Dust, I'm very happy to meet you, really.
I am overwhelmed and enlightened to meet you, and you have accepted our invitation.
Oh yes, what a great joy. It is a real joy. I have been once in Bangalore.
Okay. Couple of years back, or how long?
Yeah, I have been, yeah, that was it was a very nice time. That was in the year 2009.
Wow.
And I was speaking publicly here and there. You see, it was such a joy to be in Bangalore, really. It was, and
We are no, it's our pleasure, sir. Once this new normal gets over,
yeah.
please come.
Oh, I
We are
would
a
like to.
90-year-old organization.
Yes,
And
I have so pleasant memories to Bangalore, yeah, and particularly, you know, the Gandhi Bhavan, and I remember also some interesting story I didn't know. I tell you, there was a great scholar from Russia who was living near, or who somehow was related. His family was related to Bangalore, yeah, and it was a Buddhist scholar.
okay.
You remember? You know about this? It's a very no. This is a very interesting story. You know, this is a very interesting man. You see, no, I really, it's, you know, this is spontaneous what I'm doing now. Yeah, I try to come back to his name. He was so important. He was really important man. He was from St. Petersburg in Russia. Yeah.
And his good name, sir?
Yeah. Now we should find out his name. Yeah. Let me see. I'm 100% sure that I will find out the name for you during these minutes. Yes. So I will like to tell you more. Yeah. But at the moment, you see, I'm maybe because it is of my age, I'm not remembering his great name. But you know, he is so important for Bangalore and for the world because he was the one instrumental in protecting, you know, cultural monuments during wartime.
Okay.
You understand? Yeah.
Yes.
So if you now search for his name, you will find his name. He was the pioneer in protecting cultural monuments during wartime. It was during the 30s. He was even collaborating with the US president in that, really.
Wow.
But he was much more, you know. He was amazing, a painter, and he was a Buddhist scholar from St. Petersburg. You know, we are close to his name, but we should find it out because it's so relevant for Bangalore.
I'll find out during during our talk. Of course, I'll try to find out his name.
Yes, certainly.
And you being my teacher and tutor, I'll try to being a student, humble student of yours. I'll try to answer your queries.
Yeah, that is amazing, you know. This is amazing. We should certainly honor this man from both continents, from Europe and from Asia. He should be he remembered. It is a pity that we do not remember him, his name, and this is very important. And particularly on this day, the International Day of Nonviolence, you know, we should definitely remember this man, because he was against the destruction and war, and he was a pioneer, and he was living in Bangalore, near Bangalore. It's hard to believe, but and this is happening in the public now, that I forget his name, you see. This is a public demonstration of forgetting. But this is, you know, this is very important now, because of cultural heritage, which includes nowadays also tangible culture, such as buildings, monuments, landscapes, books, word, and art, and artifacts. Also intangible culture, such as folklore, traditions, language, and knowledge, and natural heritage, yes, including cultural significant landscapes, which shall not be destroyed. You understand? So to preserve it is so important. And I'm very close to find his name. I tell you, I'm very close. Nicholas Roerich, yes, we found his name now. It's amazing. Nicholas Roerich, a Russian lawyer, painter, and writer. That's hard to believe, yeah. And his name is spelled following: R-O-E-R-I-C-H. Born in St. Petersburg, and lived in various places around the world until his death in Himachal Pradesh in India, but his family then in Bangalore, you see. It's amazing, yeah?
You are.
What a great painter. The last time I saw his paintings in Sofia in Bulgaria, yeah? And I was invited by a friend to see Sofia, Bulgaria, and then I admired his paintings. And when I was in Bangalore in 2009, then I saw, can you imagine, reproductions of his paintings in Bangalore as, you know, tokens of symbols and tokens of memory. And nothing else is what we are doing today. So you invited me for a lecture, and we are doing educational work in Germany, as you know, and referring to the tradition of nonviolent resistance. And we called our center Gandhi Information Center, and this was highlighting Gandhi from the beginning of the 90s until now, 30 years now. And I'm so happy that
we joined on 2nd of October, that is 151 birthday. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. And this is perhaps I add something which you might not know, but I was by surprise, I was invited to the conference in January 2007, which launched this International Day of Nonviolence. That was an Indian-South African conference, can you imagine? And it was in New Delhi, and there were many government representatives, yes, but also some representatives of non-governmental organizations. And I was so happy. And I gladly consented then, said yes to the resolution of that conference. And half a year later, after some great work of the then Indian foreign minister, it was a unanimous decision of the United Nations General Assembly. That was in June 2007. And from then on, we have a new element in the United Nations, a new norm, non-violence. Can you imagine? Non-violence, it's institutionalized, and it is linked with the name of an Indian citizen. And this is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the lawyer, called Mahatma. Isn't it amazing?
Amazing.
So it's like you can say it's like a sweet revenge. You understand?
Yeah.
You know, it's a positive way of retaliation. Yeah. After so much suffering from famines and exploitation and colonialism and imperialism and militarism and cultural violence and structural violence and personal violence. This was really necessary. And I'm really happy. And since then, I see there's a chance to understand the United Nations better and from a different point of view, not just as a substitute institution for a world federation, which we need, with equal members, with interior policy, without army, you know, without visa, but also, and this is very interesting, as a cultural force, a soul force. Because just start with studying the United Nations International Days, and you see how relevant these observances of the United Nations International Days are. And you are observing this particular international day, and this is a reason to celebrate. So I say cheers to you. And I'm so happy about your invitation. And we as world citizens, you know, without a world passport, of course, not yet, but there will be, I'm certain, yeah? It will just take a few more months or years, and then we have a world passport of all world citizens, yeah, okay? And then we can cross the borders without visa, you know, and then we will be free to meet each other and bring out something new, a new quality. And it all started, well, where did it start? From the Arabian Sea, a small town at the Arabian Sea in Gujarat. You see, it all started. Nobody knew about this, yes? So you, as a nation, can be happy that you are not living under the shadow of a Hitler or Napoleon or Stalin, you understand? Or a Truman who dropped atomic bombs, you know. This is a shadow, you know, it's a curse. And I want to give you, before I tell you about the topic of my lecture today.
Then I would like to interrupt you here.
Yeah,
It won't be fair from my part that if I don't introduce you to the Augusta delegates, so please give me a few minutes of time to introduce you. Yes. Then we can start formally the program.
Yeah, I will be very happy, yes.
And it was so mesmerizing, though, no, we've just, so let me start. Yeah, so please. My dear delegates, esteemed speakers, and Honorable General Secretary, the President and Chairman of Gandhi Smarak Nidhi, Bengaluru, and Dr. S.N. Venkatesh, Principal of Seshadipuram First Grade College. I welcome here on behalf of everyone here, Christian Berthoff, born in January 1960 in Lübeck, is a German educational and political scientist. Since November 1993, he has been the first chairman of the non-profit association Gandhi Information Zentrum based in Berlin. He has been researching and documenting questions of non-violence, pacifism, conscience, objection since 1987. His work has been quoted by Surendra Bhana, Margaret Chatterjee, Eric Gideon, Thomas, and other scholars of Gandhi and his contemporary witnesses. Bertov published several works on Gandhi and Tolstoy, including a book on Leo Tolstoy's social philosophy and several books on Mahatma Gandhi in correspondence with famous contemporaries. In 1986, he compiled articles and historical documents of 2-volume publication on the history of US pacifism for the John F. Kennedy Institute of North American Studies at Free University, Berlin. He was a professional advisor for conscientious objectives and head of a peace education media office for the Evangelion Church district in Berlin, Spandau, and for the Evangelion Church between 1991 to 2006. He created 21 exhibitions on nonviolence and pacifism for the non-profit association Gandhi Information Zentrum EV, together with Berlin Anti-War Museum from 2008 to 2020. So in 2007, Bertov took part in Satyagraha conference at the invitation of Government of India. The results of his conference led to the UN resolution on June 15, 2017 for the International Day of Nonviolence, which we are speaking just before we could start, which is celebrated annually on October 2, the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi. And he has written several books. He has got several awards. To name a few, Shanti Dut, Ambassador of Peace Award on the occasion of International Seminar on Education and Peace for the World Peace Movement Trust in Mumbai, India. And he is so dedicated Gandhian that he is the chairman of Gandhi Center at Berlin. And without further delay, we would love to listen to him, though he had been several programs today virtually, but he has accepted our invitation in the very last minute, and we wholeheartedly thank him and wish his good health and wish he would visit Bangalore, our 90-year-old organization, shortly to give us his enlightenment. Over to you, sir. Welcome you wholeheartedly.
Yes, now we understand each other, and I'm so happy and honored. It's delightful to be with you, particularly after my wonderful experience in Bangalore in the year 2009. And it is a great joy to be with you. And I see about 40 participants of this. And this is a very impressive series of lectures which you organized, Professor Das. And I'm so impressed by the personalities you could invite. And I don't want to mention these personalities which have done so much for the fellow human beings. But among them, there's even one who almost saved my life when I was in India first time in 1985. So I'm really moved by your invitation, and I'm so happy about the choice of those you invited. It's really significant, and I hope that the tape reproduction of this recordings will also be visible for all our participants and for all those after us, even if we both are not any longer, so that they can study what has been said. And in fact, I have received several invitations during the past months, and this surprised me positively because I never expected this. And I think it is certainly a great chance for us to meet each other more regularly and speak about some topics in depth, and also to have an interesting dialogue about this and that. So now what you are doing is to invite eminent personalities. I do not count myself among these, but nevertheless, eminent personalities. You invited them to speak for some time. And I think you allowed me to speak for some 20 minutes, half an hour. Is that so?
Speak for 40 minutes, as long as you wish.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Then I want to tell you that I always try to choose another topic when I am invited. So not to repeat myself too frequently. So today, on this wonderful day, the International Day of Nonviolence of the United Nations, because of GANDHIAN, the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, I chose 4 topics during 4 invitations. And this morning I spoke about Henry David Thoreau and his essay, Civil Disobedience, which was a great influence on Mahatma Gandhi in rediscovering an Indian concept for nonviolent resistance, for a combination of nonviolent, non-cooperation, civil disobedience, and passive resistance. He wanted to create a new term. First, he chose civil resistance. And then in January 1908, he created this term satyagraha. And in the Indian language, there is a root sat in satya, which is not in all languages. But this is very essential to understand. And this firmness in truth, this, other people say clinging to truth, but firmness in truth, this is so close to the concept of conscience, following your conscience, the freedom of conscience, the collected science of mankind in yourself, you see, the small little voice within you, and follow the voice of truth, even if it's very, very, very low, but listen to it. Find a silent moment, and then follow the principles of humanity, as they are justice, to do good to others, to serve others, and also to find real joy and appreciate the beauty without any remorse. This is important. I think these human values, they are all linked with this voice of conscience. But if you are acting in a way that you are feeling manipulated, directed by some other will, which you don't approve of, then you get sick after some time. You get awfully sick. And Gandhi was a liberator, and his program was emancipation from slavery and war. It's amazing. And he didn't want to apply violence, because this was not the way. There was so much violence, not just the violence of the oppressors, of the exploiters, of the imperialists and colonialists, racists. No, there was also the violence of those who attacked that, who wanted to have a revolution, a bloody revolution, just to get rid of these oppressors. So 2 coins of 1 medal, you can say, but it's not so simple, because the revolutionaries were right in what they wanted. They wanted independence. They wanted socio-economic, self-reliance, independence, Swadeshi, Swaraj. This was the program, not just the guys from Bengal, but also from other parts of India and from other parts of the world suffering from this system of exploitation, starting with the British India Company, East India Company, the British trade organization. And there were so many colonial powers in India, for example. not the Germans, but as far as I know, but the Danish, for example, the Danish were in India. They wanted to, not just to trade, but the French, Portuguese, and so many different colonial powers. And in South Africa, there were British and Boers rivaling. And this was a time in South Africa of genocides and massacres from the colonial powers. German in Southwest Africa, the French North, and also the British in the East and in South Africa. They were bloody in the crushing revolts, and they were obviously not in the right. They were wrong. So now what Gandhi did was he was trying to find a new political strategy, a program to overcome the deficiencies of modern civilization. He didn't want to imitate the West. He didn't want to glorify the East, but he wanted to learn from the best sources. And in this context, Gandhi was creating his two new key concepts with new terms, Satyagraha on the one hand, but also Savodaya. This is a paraphrase of John Ruskin's book, Unto This Last, 4 essays on the principles of political economy. And this book refers to the parable of the workers in the vineyard. And the message of this parable of the New Testament, Jesus' parable, was equality, guaranteed income. This was the key message. But Ruskin, in his book, he was speaking about capital, about taxes, about social responsibility, about everything which was interesting for Mahatma Gandhi, just to overcome this system of economic oppression. So he invented, he paraphrased this book, translated it into Gujarati, published it in his Indian opinion, and then he created a new term, the welfare of all, the advancement of all, the uplift of all, and it was, in Indian opinion, was translated universal dawn, sunrise for all, you can say, universal dawn, hope of emancipation, of welfare, not for the greatest number, like Bantam propagated or other utilitarianists, not just for the greatest number, so that the minority, which becomes an ever larger majority after some time, suffers. No, at the expense of the few greedy, well-organized groups. No, it was an emancipation of all. It included in South Africa contract laborers or indentured laborers working on sugar plantation farms and in coal mines. And he wanted to organize them for collaborating in the resistance. Without them, there would have been no non-violent resistance in South Africa. And Gandhi was not just a lawyer for merchants, but he became a political advocate. Why? Because as a lawyer, he prevented the losing party from committing suicide because of bankruptcy. He mediated. He was a good communicator in many aspects. He was also a professional editor and journalist. So don't glorify Gandhi, but he had different vocations. To have a socio-economic basis, to be fearless like Socrates, to be a perfect satyagrahi. And this was the connection between Savodaya and Satyagraha. Different vocations as the basis to be fearless for practicing nonviolent resistance, for organizing and practicing, showing to the world border transcending marches, and burning of unjust certificates, public burning of them, and all kinds of non-violent resistance. Later on, it's all you know, these boycotts of clothes gaining salt from the sea in spite of any prohibition. So it was an organization, organization of collective non-violent resistance, because Gandhi saw that that it was not just an individual like Leo Tolstoy who sympathized with the resistors all over the world, but also groups like the Doukhobors, the spirit wrestlers in Russia who burned their weapons collectively. They showed to the world that there should be a new era without military, without violence. And Tolstoy supported this group with the royalties of his last novel, Resurrection, which he gave to the Doukhobors to rescue them from being murdered by the Tsarist regime, by the Russian Cossacks. And these groups were vegetarians, pacifists. They were against any hierarchy, against the hierarchies and dogmas of the Russian Orthodox Church. They were removed from South Russia to Azerbaijan and Georgia, and then they were certainly rescued from Batumi, Black Sea, via Cyprus to Canada. And then they settled in Canada. Now they are emancipated citizens. And we could also create an exhibition on the Doukhobors. But you should know that there was another background which explains Hind Swaraj, the first political program, because Gandhi created this term Satyagraha in a prize competition. He wanted to have a very good essay on the ethics of passive resistance. And the Indian Christian M.S. Morris won this prize with his essay, which was printed in Indian Opinion. And Morris also accompanied Gandhi to Mauritius just to study the situation of indentured laborers. And they were friends, but Gandhi was not satisfied with his essays. So he wanted to create his own, his own political program. And Hind Swaraj, or Indian Home Rule, was this. It was not just the result of a controversy with violent revolutionaries in London, as we all know, when he was in contact with Savarkar in 1909. But it was mostly the result of a dialogue of Leo Tolstoy with a revolutionary from Bengal. And I show you the book about this. It's called Letter to a Hindu, Taraknath Das, Leo Tolstoy, and Mahatma Gandhi. Because Taraknath Das was a Bengal revolutionary in exile in North America, and Taraknath Das challenged Tolstoy to give a statement in favor of the Indian cause. And half a year, Tolstoy hesitated. He was in a high age, but he wanted more and more news, documents, facts from Taraknath Das. And Taraknath Das sent him. And he described the artificial famines, produced by the British colonial power in India, with so many hundreds of thousands and millions of dead people, worse than any war. And Tolstoy was deeply impressed. And then Taraknath Das, who later became a professor for political science at Columbia University, by the way, and who was married with a Quaker woman, a pacifist woman. Taraknath Das, he expected a plea for a violent revolution. That was what he longed for, a kind of starting point for a violent revolution. This was his program. He was a violent revolutionary then. But Tolstoy Tolstoy did not. He wrote a letter to an Indian. Some people call it a letter to a Hindu. This was translated into English language, authorized translation. You know, he had a very good secretary, Chatkov, who later edited the collected works of Leo Tolstoy. Even under the Stalin regime, he could do this independently. It's amazing. So this great publisher, C.W. Daniel, who published Tolstoy's essays in English, translated by Isabella Faivi-Mayu from Aberdeen, who Gandhi's friend Kallenbach visited. They were Tolstoyans, you understand. They were Thoreauvians. They were followers of Tolstoy, Thoreau, and Ruskin. So they were so closely connected with the Tolstoy family. Even the widow of the station master who hosted Tolstoy during the last days was financially supported by Gandhi and Kallenbach. So why do I say this? Taraknath thus expected some appeal for a revolution, but Tolstoy was not the one. He wanted the alternative. He wanted a collective organization of non-violent, non-cooperation, so that the British are crushing down because they are not supported any longer. This is what he challenged the Indians. And this letter to a Hindu was read by Mahatma Gandhi in South Africa. And then Gandhi asked Tolstoy, please give me permission to print this letter to an Indian for the readers of Indian opinion, but with some changes. Some changes. I want, first of all, allow me that your opinion against, reincarnation, transmigration, we will not publish, because the Indians who read this letter shall not be, prevented from reading this letter. Please allow me to change, because you're against all, superstitions and metaphysics, but in one context, you also include reincarnation and transmigration. We don't want this in this letter. So would you please allow us to change the text a bit? Yes, Tolstoy did. And the second was because of the royalties. Would it be very expensive? No, Tolstoy said he is so glad. It will be free. It will be completely free. Print it, please print it. And Gandhi sent the first biography, written not by an Indian, by the way, but by one of the few Anglicans, priests, European supporters, Joseph Doak, about the successful non-violent struggle in Transvaal. He sent this book to Gandhi, to Tolstoy. Gandhi sent this book to Tolstoy. Tolstoy read this book about Gandhi, an Indian patriot, it was called. So, and then Tolstoy was so impressed that in his last letter, which he sent to Gandhi, he passed over his heritage to Mahatma Gandhi. Tolstoy was the worldwide famous writer who supported the resistors all over the world, who propagated non-violent, non-cooperation, following the teachings of ancient prophets like Lao Tzu, who was also appreciated by Mahatma Gandhi explicitly. You can read it in the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. But also, by modern thinkers. The friend of the French Enlightenment philosopher Montaigne wrote an essay on the voluntary servitude, a discourse on voluntary servitude. And this essay was the blueprint for non-violent non-cooperation in modern times. And Tolstoy, he represented this essay in his works. Not only him, but also independent German revolutionaries trying to find a third way of a non-violent revolution, like Gustav Landauer in Germany. You see, this was a third way, you can say. It was not passivity. It was not resignation. It was not conformism. It was more than non-conformism. It was a non-violent uprising concept. And Tolstoy was the main promoter of this new era without military, but also without revolutionary violence. And Gandhi received the heritage of Tolstoy in his last letter. And what I would like to do is just to read you a few passages of these letters, which might show you the great thoughts of these thinkers. With all appreciation, I will also include Taraknath Das, because Taraknath Das was the one in May 1908 who really started this dialogue with Tolstoy. He addressed this letter to Tolstoy, and he asked him the following way: "Honorable Sir, your name is now a house word for the people working for humanity. Your works to represent the oppressed people of Russia has opened the eyes of the civilized world and attracted sympathy for them. Your moral force subdued the autocratic power of Russian government, which persistently opposed all liberal opinions, but she is awed by your work and kept quiet. Indeed, Russian people are oppressed, but they are not the most oppressed if we compare our condition, the condition of the people of India. Your worldwide knowledge of the history of nations knows how we are oppressed. In the book Prosperous British India by Sir William Digby, it is proved that 19 millions of people died in India of famines during 10 years, 1891 to 1900, whereas the loss of life by war in all the world during 107 years, between 1793 to 1900, is 5 million. You hate war, but in India, famines are worse than war. Famines of India are not famines for the want of food production, but it is caused by drainage and poverty of people created by the British government. Is it not shocking that when millions are starving, the same time thousands of tons of rice and other staple food are exported from India by the British merchants? Humanity is suffering to the extreme in India. The British policy in India is a menace to the Christian civilization. You did immense good by the literary works about Russia. We pray to you that if you have time at least to write an article about India and thus express your views about India. By the name of the starving millions, I appeal to your Christian spirit to take up the cause." And in a separate cover, Taraknath Das sent him 2 copies of his Free Hindustan magazine for his perusal. So Tolstoy responded, highly respected, Tolstoy responded that he wanted to know more, to know more about the background of these facts he mentioned in his letter. And then Taraknath Das wrote a second letter and said, "Highly respected, dear sir, I feel myself exceedingly fortunate just receiving the note of of D.P. Makovitsky, written according to your direction. I'm very glad to know that my humble idea has reached to a noble soul, and there's no doubt that some good result must come out of it. So he had a hope that Tolstoy would support his cause as a revolutionary, you know. So he sent more books, more information, and now, can you imagine? I show you. This is, one moment, Tolstoy's letter to a Hindu. He's quoting the Vedas, the Quran, at the beginning of the passages. So Tagner does appeal to the Christian spirit of Tolstoy, with all the ideas of, you know, loving your enemy and charity, and also the witness of truth. But Tolstoy appealed to the Indian background of his friend in Canada and quoted extensively the Vedas, even the teaching of the Vedas by Vivekananda, Krishna, the Hindu Quran, and the Upanishads. And he wrote a long letter in December 14th, 1908, which should be read as it's a basic literature of nonviolent resistance. It's a, from my point of view, it is one of the highlights of literature on nonviolent resistance. And you know, Tolstoy was appealing and said, it's quite clear, get rid of all these ideologies which are superstitious, but see the sober facts of life. And in a way, if this is a sinking ship you are sitting in, then throw overboard the ballast. You understand? Yeah. So it's really interesting to read that. Yeah. And also he said, it's not just happening to you, but even in the West, you know, the children are alienated. They are without direction. You understand? That's interesting, yeah. So there is some human solidarity basis. But the challenge, the sting of Tolstoy's letter, sharp sting, was following. A commercial company, that is East India Company,
Sir, 1 second, you have muted yourself.
This happened just right now, yes?
Yes, just
yes. Okay. Yeah. So Tolstoy wrote, that was the sting, the sharp sting of his provocation against Tarak Das. A commercial company enslaved a nation comprising 200 millions. And this commercial company was the East India Company. So tell this to a man free from superstition, and he will fail to grasp what these words mean. What does it mean that 30,000 men, not athletes, but rather weak and ordinary people, have subdued 200 million vigorous, clever, capable, and freedom-loving people? Do not the figures make it clear that it is not the English who have enslaved the Indians, but the Indians who have enslaved themselves? Amazing. No? And then he continues, he said, when the Indians complain that the English have enslaved them, it is as if drunkards complained that the spirit dealers who have settled among them have enslaved them. You tell them that they might give up drinking, but they reply that they are so accustomed to it that they cannot abstain and that they must have alcohol to keep up their energy. Is it not the same thing with the millions of people who submit to thousands or even to hundreds of others of their own or other nations? Of their own or other nations? See? If the people of India are enslaved by violence, it is only because they themselves live and have lived by violence and do not recognize the eternal law of love inherent in humanity. And now, then he's quoting Krishna. Just for an example, he's quoting this. Pitiful and foolish is the man who seeks what he already has and does not know that he has it. Yes, pitiful and foolish is he who does not know the bliss of love which surrounds him and which have given him. The bliss of love which surrounds him and which I have given him. And then the appeal is quite clear. It's absolutely clear. As soon as men live entirely in accord with the law of love, natural to their hearts and now revealed to them, which excludes all resistance by violence and therefore hold aloof from all participation in violence, hold aloof from all participation in violence. As soon as this happens, not only will hundreds be unable to enslave a single individual, do not resist the evildoer and take no part in doing so, either in the violent deeds of the administration and the law courts, the collection of taxes, or above all in soldiering, and no one in the world will be able to enslave you. That is Tolstoy. This is firsthand. What a challenge. And in a way, he is then extending his appeal and says, this is not just related to the Indian cause, but what is wanted, what are wanted for the Indians is for the Englishman, the Frenchman, the German, and the Russian are not constitutions and revolutions, nor all sorts of conferences and congresses, nor the many ingenious devices for submarine navigation and aerial navigation, nor powerful explosives, nor all sorts of conveniences to add to the enjoyment of the rich, ruling classes, nor new schools and universities with innumerable faculties of science, nor an augmentation of papers and books, nor gramophones and cinematographs, nor those childish and for the most part corrupt stupidities termed art. But one thing only is needful, the knowledge of the simple and clear truth which finds place in every soul, that is, not stupefied by religious and scientific superstitions. The truth that for our life, one law is valid, the law of love, which brings the highest happiness to every individual as well as to all mankind. Free your minds from those overgrown mountainous imbecilities which hinder your recognition of it, and at once the truth will emerge from amid the pseudo-religious nonsense that has been smothering it. The indubitable eternal truth inherent in man, which is one and the same in all the religions of the world. It will, in due time, emerge and make its way to general recognition, and the nonsense that has obscured it will disappear of itself, and with it will go the evil from which humanity now suffers. And in the end, he's quoting again Krishna, children, look upwards with your beclouded eyes, and a world full of joy and love will disclose itself to you. A rational world made by my wisdom, the only real world. Then you will know what love has done with you, what love has bestowed upon you, what love demands from you. So this was Tolstoy, and you know the story. I already told that Gandhi got the permission to print this letter to an Indian. It was a basic document, and then it was a basic inspiration for his Hind Swaraj, or Indian Home Rule. And just to give you the end of the story, just to make a point by saying what was the last message Tolstoy then conveyed to Gandhi in his last letter before dying. Because the letter arrived Gandhi in South Africa after Tolstoy died. And it was quite interesting. In this last letter, which was passing on the heritage to Gandhi, this letter from 7th of September 1910, Tolstoy summarizes his ideas and also gives a wonderful example of nonviolent resistance by a pupil, by a child. And I want to refer to this at the end of my lecture, just to give you an impression of this strong message Tolstoy combined with passing on his heritage of nonviolent non-cooperation to the lawyer and editor and journalist Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi in South Africa. This is really, we can celebrate this letter. It's really moving, and I hope I won't start to cry if I read it. Yes, so please please, I want your apologies if I start to cry, because it's deep in my heart. So I just read you this short letter in the two passages which might be of relevance for you for the future. And please read this letter on your own then. So the more I live, this is what Tolstoy wrote. By the way, he was in the castle of his eldest daughter, and he sent this letter to Johannesburg in Transvaal to Gandhi, and he signed in the end with my perfect esteem. Yeah. So on 7th of September 1910, Tolstoy wrote, "The more I live, and especially now that I am approaching death, the more I feel inclined to express to others the feelings which so strongly move my being, and which, according to my opinion, are of great importance. That is what one calls non-resistance, and is in reality nothing else but the discipline of love, undeformed by false interpretation. Love is the aspiration for communion and solidarity with other souls. And that aspiration always liberates the source of noble activities. That love is the supreme and unique law of human life, which everyone feels in the depth of one's soul. We find it manifested most clearly in the soul of the infants. Man feels it so long as he is not blinded by the false doctrines of the world." So now I go to the passage when he describes this one girl demonstrating nonviolent resistance. This spring, in the religious examination of a secondary school of girls in Moscow, the professor of catechism, as well as the bishop, had questioned the young girls on the 10 commandments. And above all, on the 6th, thou shalt not kill. You know, the 10 commandments, the law of the Mount Sinai, the law of the Old Testament, New Testament, the Decalogue. And one of these, the 6th here, is one commandment said, thou shalt not kill. But the church, as we know, just to explain to you, the church always made compromises. You know, they found exceptions from the rules. So when the examiner received good reply, the bishop generally paused for another question. Is killings prescribed by the sacred law always and in all cases? And the poor young girls, perverted by their teachers, must reply, no, not always. Killing is permitted during war and for the execution of criminals. However, one of those unfortunate girls, what I relate is not a fiction, but a fact that has been transmitted to me by an eyewitness. One of these girls, of these unfortunate girls, having been asked the same question, is killing always a crime? Was moved deeply, blushed, and replied with decision, is killing always a crime? Yes, always. To all the sophisticated questions habitual to the bishop, she replied with firm conviction, killing is always forbidden in the Old Testament as well as by Christ, who not only forbids killing, but all wickedness against our neighbors. In spite of all his oratorical talent and all his imposing grandeur, the bishop was obliged to beat a retreat, and the young girl came out victorious. And in the end, Tolstoy, who appeals to the conscience, who himself supported conscientious objectors to military service during times of forced legal conscription, he said, this contradiction of the Christian teaching with the brutal, violent reality is felt by everyone now. And by all the governments, by your British government as well as by our Russian government. And therefore, by the spirit of conservatism natural to these governments, the opposition is persecuted, as we find in Russia as well as in the articles of your journal, Indian Opinion, more than any other anti-governmental activity. Nonviolent resistance persecuted more than any other anti-governmental activities. And now the last sentence. The governments know from which direction comes the principal danger and try to defend themselves with a great zeal in that trial, not merely to preserve their interests, but actually to fight for their very existence. So this was Tolstoy's message to Gandhi. And Gandhi then himself put in words his the vision of an ideal society, and called it enlightened anarchy. And he explains this, so in case you want to get the quote, I can find it. So it's really passing on the heritage. And Gandhi then, as we know, became the light of Asia in the 20th century. By the way, The Light of Asia, that was the book which Gandhi wrote about Buddha. And that was in London, in the translation of Sir Edwin Arnold. The Light of Asia, that was the starting point, you know. And the first conversation with his great friend and collaborator, with whom he had not had this success, with whom he would not have become a Mahatma, was with Hermann Kallenbach, the German Jewish architect who built up the Tolstoy farm together with him in South Africa. And the first conversation of Kallenbach and Gandhi was about the Light of Asia, Buddha. It's amazing. But, you know, I'm not a Buddhist. My name is Christian, so I'm a member of a Christian church. But I can tell you, in principle, there is no essential difference from then until today. Still, we are facing the same compromises, half-hearted knowledge, and also this half-hearted wisdom. No, this is not what we should follow, these dogmas and these legitimations for violence any longer. Neither in church nor in on the level of states. We need some new a world federation without military, and also we need no more death penalty. We need human rights according to the Universal Charter of Human Rights, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, and freedom of science, freedom of, and you know, all those pupils and students shall be encouraged to think freely, like Tolstoy and Gandhi, and they were all emancipating themselves from all the shackles, chains and shackles, from all the bondages of all these ideologies. But now try to find the heart, try to listen to the still small voice of conscience and follow the pathway of truth on the way of nonviolence. And this is not easy. It's sometimes combined with pain and suffering, but it is great reward to keep up a good spirit, even at the expense of a career, of prestige, of fame, reputation. It's rewarding. The reward is not just in the beyond, not just in the heaven. It's here. It's here and now. Thank you.
Really, it's so moving, so touching. The emotion which you have taken out of that letter and of the small kid, it's really, I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
Seeing your emotions and the feeling what you have, really it's very much true as we tell that if we don't want to enslave ourselves, nobody can slave us, make us slave. The letter of Tolstoy, when you told that you will be giving a talk on Tolstoy and Gandhiji, I was just going through. Really, it makes no that without those boundaries which we have created, the man-made boundaries must fall, and we must follow the Germans, West and East German, the Berlin Wall, which has been demolished. How beautifully you have created. The same way I think we must, across all the borders, not only India, Israel, Germany, US, Russia, everywhere, if this man-made wall gets broken down, I think humanity thrives. So I just you must not lose faith in humanity. Humanity is an ocean. If a few drops of the oceans are dirty, few drops of the ocean are dirty, the ocean doesn't become dirty. We must understand the flower, the national flower of India, the lotus.
Lotus, yes. Mm-hmm.
It blooms, it comes out from the clay, mud and all, but not the leaves, not the petals, bear even a single dirt or the mud. So I feel without dark, we can't see the light. Without light, there is no dark. There is always two sides of a coin. So one side won't make a coin. One face won't make boon and bliss. So therefore, we, in a simple language, I'm a science guy. So I don't understand too much, but the way, the passion and emotion you have embedded into your talk, it's really touched our heart. The few talks were the talk later, the few sentences what you have told, you are the master of your destiny.
So nice of you, these flattening words. But you know, it's just a good opportunity for me to say that there are some secrets not revealed in history writing. So one was I was invited to East Berlin in GDR. I was asked to speak about Gandhi. That was a talk which influenced civil rights activists there. So I just talked about Gandhi, you know. I didn't talk about politics, national politics, East and West confrontation, no.
Nothing.
But a few months later, you know, what happened? Some passage was of major importance for those who listened to me silently, and they knew they were observed, you know, inside and outside, they knew. And this passage was when I spoke about the collective exodus, you know, the decision to leave the region by peasants in a nonviolent resistance campaign in India, which was connected with Gandhi. And this collective exodus, you know, the word comes from the escape of the people of Israel from Egypt to long way through the desert to Palestine, and they were followed by the Egyptian troops and almost killed, but there was a miracle and they survived. So they were enslaved, they were slaves in Egypt. And many gospels and spirituals refer to this. So this exodus, this idea of leaving, you know, voting by leaving, voting with your feet, yeah. Voting, leaving, just leaving, and then say we will no longer cooperate with your government. Yeah, this was the basic idea they appreciated. They were so alert when I mentioned this. It was in beginning of January 1989, and I didn't expect the fall of the government then so soon, but I was sleeping quite smoothly because we could anticipate what was going on, but it was a non-violent revolution, that's true. And now this is 30 years afterwards, and there is a national holiday, 3rd of October, and people are remembering this here in Germany. And it was also influenced by Gandhi, you know, because of the spirit of Gandhi in East German civil resistance groups, yes, and also in Western, of course, the peace movement, ecological movement of the 80s, which I was a part of. So we were inspired by Gandhi and Martin Luther King and the nonviolent resistance. And we applied it somehow by transcending borders and sharing our thoughts. I remember, just to give you a last anecdote, I went with slides to East Germany after my first visit in India and showed them in the border control. They could have stopped me. They could have said, you want to make a propaganda show? And they saw, you know, from the constructive program of Gandhi, they saw some toilet, you know, simple toilet. So the demonstration of constructive program in the Gandhi Museum in Madurai, I made this photo, and so he said, "Oh, this is a holiday photo. Okay, you can leave, you can go." So I went to my friends in East Germany and showed them the slides and talked about Tolstoy and non-cooperation and support of non-violent resistance, because I was not stopped, because they thought I would take some holiday photos, but I was full of impressions of my first trip to India then, and I was then telling them that Tolstoy has supported conscientious objectives all over the world. That's amazing. And yes, I agree with you. In the moment the global pandemic comes to an end, then there might not be so many reasons to meet virtually, but then we should meet in person, certainly. And of course, you're also invited to visit me in Berlin. So don't worry, it's vice versa. All the invitations now, you know, I would like to drink a cup of Indian tea in an Indian restaurant in Berlin, Germany, with you, and eat some ice cream, you know, some innocent ice cream, of course. And also to show you maybe some of the positive aspects of European culture, which is not so easy to find sometimes, but there are a few nice aspects. So it's really by heart. So we should please continue our dialogue, Professor Das. And you have the same name as Taraknath does. So we are both on the shoulders of our great modern prophets and dedicated ancestors. Thank you so much. All the best for you.
Thank you. It is my pleasure. We welcome you wholeheartedly to India, and definitely it will be my pleasure to visit you.
Yeah.
I now request our principal, Dr. S.N. Venkatesh, sir, if he could unmute himself, and let me see if he is there. It will be.
Hello. Hello.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Hello. Sir, it is a wonderful opportunity for Seshadripuram First Grade College, and very good. You are a very good speaker, sir. And amazingly, you are discuss on everything. And wholeheartedly, I congratulate you. And it is our pleasure. Once you visit India, you please visit our institution. And it is a great thing. And your knowledge, your vision, mission, focus on Gandhian thought, especially for in today's present world, with comparison with past thing, is really immense and really appreciable. I am thankful to you, sir. It is on behalf of Seshadripuram First Grade College, Seshadripuram Education Institution. I am thankful to you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
It's only mutual.
Yeah.
I thank our beloved principal, Dr. S.N. Venkatesh, sir, that it is he who has been supporting us to organize this kind of webinars or programs or any events. And it is his humbleness that at this point, now we know in spite of his busy schedule, he makes a point to welcome or to thank our esteemed delegates. We really wholeheartedly thank our principal and all our faculties, students, and none other than, nonetheless, I thank Christian Berthoff. Please, with our folded hands, we welcome you to India, and we accept your invitation. Whenever we find time, we'll have in person, we'll meet and discuss lots. If we could little bit take your information or knowledge, the way you share will be blessed. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you soon in India.
Jai Jagat. Jai Jagat.